Good morning. Welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Monday, August 23rd, 2021. And our top story today, how AARP is helping Americans manage their debt. Well, joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Gary Koenig is a Vice President for Financial Security at AARP. Gary, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's great. And we're going to talk about older Americans, older people managing debt. Let's talk about this pandemic, because I think it really is illustrative of some of the behavior we've seen. How have Americans 50 and older kind of handled their financial security and handled this debt management issue?
So with respect to the pandemic, I would say like the general population, the 50 plus, how they weathered this period largely depends on how the pandemic affected their job. We did a survey early this year, and what we found is that about 30% of those 50 plus said their current financial situation was worse than it was 12 months earlier. So 12 months earlier is about just before the start of the pandemic. When we followed up with them and we said, what was the major reasons for their financial situation? Why was it worse? The most common reason we decided were job loss or being furloughed. But interesting, following that, after job loss, it was an increase in debt levels. So we thought that was interesting. And of course, when you have job loss, that may often be accompanied by rising debt levels.
Yeah, and I know this has been such a difficult time from a health perspective, but also that anxiety, that mental health that comes from not being able to pay your bills or maybe losing a job. When you look at the survey results and you think about the next 12 months, what are some of the key issues, the key financial issues that this population of people are thinking about?
So from that survey that we did conduct, which was mainly workers 25 plus, although we were able to split it and look separately at those 50 and older versus those 25 to 49. We found that about half of those 50 plus said that they plan to work on paying off their debt over the next 12 months. It was about the same percentage as those who were 25 to 49. We also found a similar percentage, about 50% of those 50 plus, who said they plan to work on saving for retirement. And roughly 4 in 10 planned on reducing their expenses. The numbers that we saw for those 25 to 49 by comparison, just those last two numbers were flipped. So for those 25 to 49, about half plan to work on reducing their expenses, and 4 in 10 planned on working on retirement savings. I mean, overall, I would say that certainly debt and savings, particularly retirement savings, are two issues that are top of mind for the 50 plus. But as well as reducing expenses. And I would just point out that, reducing expenses is a pathway to freeing up funds to put towards paying down debt or to increasing your savings.
Yeah, a really good point. Let's talk a little bit about emergency savings, because we heard at the height of the pandemic that Americans didn't even have $400 in their savings to deal with emergency savings. How, looking back at the survey, looking back at some of these results, and then looking forward, how devastating is it now to individuals when they have unexpected expenses, health expenses, maybe their car, they haven't been driving their car and it hasn't been working, maybe they need a new roof on their house, or they need to find a new apartment to rent because they were evicted from their current apartment. How devastating can that be, and how impactful can that be going forward?
Well, the things that you just mentioned are clearly sources of financial stress for people. I would say that unexpected financial challenges, which could be an unplanned expense or it could be a loss of income, they happen to people. It can happen multiple times in a year. And based on my own experience, sometimes it seems to happen all at once. And I would say that they are more common than people realize. So the best way to plan for them is by building up an emergency savings account. We know from the stat that you just mentioned that many people don't have savings to fully address those unexpected financial challenges. But it's a major concern for people. The other thing I would say that, like in the case of an unexpected expense, what we often see and what we've heard is that people will choose sort of the quickest way to resolve the issue in the moment. And so for a medical bill, that might be putting it on their credit card when in fact there are other ways, other things people should do that are perhaps that are better approaches to dealing with that medical bill or that unplanned expense.
And just to kind of follow up on that, in terms of paying for that, you mentioned the credit card maybe not a good option because it has a high interest rate that you can really build up debt. I guess there are other ways to finance expensive medical payments as well.
There are, and the first thing that we would want people to do is to really make sure that their bill is correct and that their insurance is paying the correct amount. But once you get back there, before you even go to pay the bill, if you can't pay it, you should be working with the provider or the hospital to try to get on a payment plan, because often those payment plans will be interest free, and they're a better approach than putting it on your credit card.
And my experience is in anecdotally is that a lot of like landlords, they'll work with you. I mean, people are in similar situations, and it's better to raise this as an issue rather than keep it to yourself, or like you said, put it on a credit card. I think people, even a large hospital system, they would be willing to sit down with you, map out a strategy so that they could get paid and paid in a period of time that is good for them, but also won't break your bank when it comes to your budget.
That's a great point, because we want people to be more proactive. I think sometimes when you get an unexpected bill, you may want to just sort of forget about it and bury it. As I said, do whatever's easiest in the moment. But what we would encourage people to do is to be more proactive and to reach out to the creditors, because sometimes you'll find that they're willing to work with you. I mean, they're ultimately do want to get paid. If you're not in a position where you can make that payment, they sometimes will work out a deal with you.
Yeah, and the last thing they want to do is turn it over to a company that chases you down for credit, because they have to pay a portion of that expense to that firm, and they don't derive the original benefit from what you owed them. Gary, last question here. Let's talk about managing debt, and what's the best way? I know we're going to get into the debt manager in the second segment, but maybe we just tee it up for the audience. What's the best way to track and manage all of these debt expenses?
So the first, what I would suggest is first just seeing all your debts in one place and noting what is the interest rate, the amount owed, minimum payments, and due dates. I mean, that's a good way to start when you're trying to tackle your debt. This can be done, it can be done with paper and pen. It can be done in a spreadsheet or through a website or an app. Really, it's a question of what works best for the individual. And we're going to get into ARP Money Map Debt Manager, but that is a free web-based platform that users can use to track and manage all their debt.
Yeah, really important. And I think, Gary, I know I said that was the last question, but just one more. I mean, I think the tendency, just human behavior, is you got all these things piling up to stick your head in the sand like an ostrich and just say, no mas, I can't deal with it. I'm going to put it off till later. But it's one of these things where you really have to start chipping away, and you can make progress over a long period of time. Don't expect results immediately, but if you chip away, you'll be better off a year from now than you would be if you didn't do it.
In general, finances can be overwhelming for people. And so it's understandable that people may not want to face it. But I think, as we're saying in this conversation, really the situation's not going to go away. So find the resources, find the tools that help you to create a plan that you can stick to. And as you said, to chip away at it over time, and things will get better.
Well, Gary, I need to take a very quick break. We'll talk about the tool that Gary was hinting to, I was hinting to as well, the AARP Money Debt Map Manager. You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM.
You need a financial plan that fits the way you want to live in retirement. A plan that can help grow and protect your money, now or in the future. With an annuity in your plan to help cover essential expenses, you'll have the freedom to live the retirement you want. This is what an annuity can do. Find the right financial professional to show you how. Learn more at protectedincome.org.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking to AARP's Gary Koenig this morning. Gary, thanks so much for staying with us.
My pleasure.
Well, Gary, let's start off with, why did AARP create the Money Map Debt Manager?
So AARP Money Map is what I'll refer to as a platform. And as part of that platform, we have Debt Manager, which can help people to make a plan for paying off their debt, but it also includes unplanned expenses. So we can help people cope with an unplanned expense like a medical bill or a home repair. We also have on AARP Money Map what we call a budget feature, which allows people to proactively budget to free up funds to put towards debt or savings and to help them reach their financial goals.
When you talk about expenses, I'm assuming there's different categories. How are expenses categorized? I mean, are there 3 or 4 different main categories that these are all lumped into?
Sure. So when we're talking about Debt Manager, that's part of AARP Money Map, really users can enter any debt that they want help creating a plan to pay down. And Debt Manager will help them track it and give them a plan for repaying it. So from a recent survey that we conducted, we found amongst those who said that they plan to tackle debt over the next 12 months, the top 4 debts that they wanted to address, besides mortgages, were credit cards, which was by far the largest category, with 60% identifying that debt as something that they wanted to work on. And that was followed by auto loans, then student loans, and a balance on a medical bill. And as I said, for AARP Money Map, the Debt Manager, you can enter any of those or all of them, whatever debt you're dealing with, and it will help create a step-by-step action plan, including telling you how much to pay toward each debt and which debt to pay first.
Is there, you mentioned credit cards, and I have to assume that, there's trillions of dollars of credit card debt. It's right up there with student loan debt, unfortunately. Is there one expense category that maybe is more important than another? You mentioned credit cards, mortgages, home, debt, etc. But is this one stand out as more important than another?
Well, you mentioned credit cards, and I would just point out and double down on what you said, which is essentially they can be particularly dangerous for consumers and their financial situation because they are so convenient to use, and that's by design. And the pain that folks incur from the expense of putting an expense on a credit card is put off until the due date, and then you only need to make the minimum payment. But if you get into that situation where you continue to rack up debt on your credit card, only making the minimum payment, interest rates are very high on credit cards, as you said, and it could be a very costly way of paying for some of your expenses, particularly if you don't pay it off quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. The last thing you want to go is in the wrong direction. Instead of chipping away, you're building back up. It's like putting bricks together. Does the Debt Manager actually help you come up with strategies, like prioritizing what to start with first? Because I think the balancing act that I always hear about when it comes to retirement savings is, how am I going to pay off my college debt? How am I going to pay for my kids to go to school if they choose to go to college or private school or some other schooling? Does it help with kind of laying out a thought process or strategy on what you should tackle first?
It absolutely does. So it helps folks create a plan for paying off their debt. And the first step is putting in all your information. And then what we create using a strategy that's used by financial advisors is we will provide guidance once you put in the amount of your debts, your interest rates, the due date, and the minimum payment. We will then give you guidance and help you create that plan for telling you how much you should pay off, how much you should pay towards each debt, which debts you should pay first. And Jeff, I think you know this, there are different strategies that are out there. I mean, two popular ones are, one's called the avalanche method and the other one is the snowball method. Under both of those strategies, you make minimum payments on all your debts except one. And then the difference between the two is under the avalanche method, you pay extra money toward the debt with the highest interest rate. So those are the most costly debts. And once that debt is paid, you move on to the debt with the next highest interest rate and so on. Under the snowball method, you make the extra payments to the smallest debt first and you work your way up, regardless of interest rate. So the idea is that you're building some confidence and momentum in paying off your debts. For ARP Money Map, we actually use a hybrid method that takes the best from both of those strategies. And as I said, what you'll get through ARP Money Map Debt Manager tool is you'll put in your information, and based on the information that you put in, we will provide you a strategy and a plan for paying down your debt. And it goes beyond just how much to pay. We also give you hints on dealing with creditors or how to talk to creditors.
Yeah, that's really important, be able to speak the same language and be able to relate to people. I kind of go back to what we were talking about in segment one with being able to talk to the billing people at the hospital to come up with a plan. You got to be able to speak the language. Let's kind of shift a little bit. Let's talk about the importance of managing debt and your credit score. We see ads all the time. We read about it on digital sites like AARP's great site. How important is managing debt to getting the best credit score possible? Excuse me.
So staying current on your debts is critical to getting a good credit score, to maintaining a good credit score. It's also important to have a manageable amount of debt because that's another factor that goes into your credit score. So you want your balances to be well below your credit limit, right? You don't want to get up to your credit limit. And it's important because creditors use your credit score to decide whether to give you credit, whether to give you a loan, and what are the terms of the loan. So it will affect the interest rate you receive, which, as we discussed, will affect the cost of the loan that you're paying to borrow that money. So credit scores are important. Managing your debt, having a manageable amount of debt, staying current on your debts are keys to maintaining a good credit score.
Yeah, I would imagine as you get older, it becomes even more important to make sure that you're managing debt, maintaining that credit score, because if you have to pay for something that's expensive and you need good credit, you don't want to see your credit kind of washed away. So it's better to kind of tackle this debt situation as soon as possible.
Yeah, the other thing I would say to that is as you get older and you're starting to think about retirement, you do want to enter retirement with a handle on your debt and with a manageable amount of debt. I would almost say as little debt as you could have, because once you enter retirement, you're giving up your regular earnings and you're moving to more of a fixed income. So being able to have a debt that you feel comfortable with, that you can manage, is really important as you head to retirement.
Really, really good idea. You got to start off retirement on the best foot possible. Gary, we're going to have to leave it there. I feel like we didn't do the topic enough justice. We just really scratched the surface. But we look forward to having you and AARP back on the program again very soon to discuss this and a lot more. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you very much.
That wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the information in retirement, markets, technology, personal finance, so much more, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. We're back again tomorrow. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes.
Are you being audited and do you owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes? Is the IRS threatening to take more of your money? Don't fight the IRS alone. The Tax Doctor is here to help you negotiate your tax bill and reduce your stress. The IRS can freeze your assets and seize your bank accounts, but you can stop these IRS actions. The Tax Doctor will work with you using our years of experience to represent your case to help you get the best resolution under the IRS guidelines. Help is here to deal with the IRS to reduce your stress. We've handled thousands of cases, so we know what we're doing. If you owe $10,000 or more in back taxes, do not call the IRS alone. Call a Tax Doctor now for a tax emergency analysis.
Call 800-224-6439.